Okay, morning everyone. Great to see everyone here this morning. And firstly, thank you very much for coming along. Should be a fascinating debate we've got today and an absolutely fantastic panel we've got here this morning. So a lot of you know me. I'm Max from Gravity Office Interiors. Again, thanks so much for being here. We hope you just leave today inspired and informed a little bit more about what we've got to talk about. I think the workplace has changed dramatically, and whatever industry you're in, whether you're a startup, medium, small, large business, I think this is relevant to everyone. So really appreciate you being here this morning. So before we get into things, we want a little bit of your input into something. So we've got a poll this morning. We want you to take part in a bit of a poll we've got here. So phones out, everyone. If you can scan the QR code, which we hope is working. Also on the flyers in front of your table, if that's easier.
You have to move out of the way.
And hopefully it'll be fairly intuitive and self-explanatory. The narrative is clearly around how it's your perspective and how you feel about hybrid, remote, or office-based work. And it's interesting to get your perspective now, and we will also do this at the end of the session to see if some of your perception has changed with the things that are discussed. Wow, very interesting. A few people left? Okay, so I only have the results, and it's a landslide. Hybrid work is 71% in this room, which is incredible. In the office full-time, 20%. Fully remote, 5%. Not sure yet, still figuring out what works best for the team, 5%. Sounds like a Gravity Office Interiors job there, so come speak to me after. So yeah, interesting. So unanimous at the moment. So hybrid work, it's clearly a big factor of existing businesses and possibly the route that people will move into in the future as well. So without further ado, we'll kick off the debate, and Stuart will introduce the panel. But firstly, our host, Dr. Stuart Barnes, founder and CEO of Quolux, leaders in business growth and leadership development. They work across a range of sectors, whether it be in the boardroom or in the factory, in any commercial environment, and use a mix of in-person and hybrid methods. Stuart is also an author of countless books. I've forgotten the count now. I think we're into double figures. 24, there we go. So a breadth of experience in this industry, and we're so glad we've got Stuart here to facilitate this morning. And I talk firsthand, me and my wife Amy at the back there. We've graduated from a hugely successful program that they run called LEAD, and so I know firsthand how impactful Stuart's and the team's work is across Gloucestershire and further afield. So over to Stuart to kick things off.
Thank you. Thanks, Max, and thank you. Well, and thank you to Gravity Office Interiors as well for creating this event, bringing together a fabulous panel that I'll introduce you to in a second, and for doing a fantastic job and inviting so many people along here today as well. So a big thank you for everybody coming out. So it's my pleasure, my honour, to introduce 4 local business people who've got a deep insight into the subject. So firstly, Andy Barham. So Andy is Managing Director of Premier Kitchens based in Gloucester. And they're recently multi-award-winning business, and recently awarded the accolade of Investors in People Gold. So they're doing great things in the workplace with the people. And manufacturing business as well, employing 135 people locally. And there's a huge commitment inside the organisations towards excellence, high performance, innovation, and people focused. Secondly, we have Michelle Fern. So Michelle is the Chief Executive of Soul Publishing and Soul Gloss as well. So Soul Gloss is the leading media brand in the county as well. The organisation has been going for almost 20 years now.
I know I don't look old enough.
Yeah, you started when you were 5. And their mission is to revolutionise regional media. And they recently moved into one of the best looking offices around as well, SLG, down in the centre of town there as well. So she's going to share her insights on shaping creativity, dynamic working, inspiring working environments as well, and help leading the team into the next part of growth in Soul Publishing. Next we have Aled James. Aled is the head of people at Workplace Interiors. So they're the overall parent to Gravity. They employ 63, I should have said Michelle has got 16 there. Aled brings over a decade's worth of HR and engagement experience from big brands such as Superdry. So I guess you know a little bit about Dunkerton.
I was going to say, I've got to be very careful what I say, haven't I?
Yeah, there's a trap door into that seat there as well. And Aled has been leading on impactful people strategies inside Workplace Interiors, and most recently been recognised as a great place to work as well. Massive accolade there at a national level, and indeed your work has been really quite exceptional in bringing commitment, etc., into the organisation. And then you can probably tell on the panel which one is cyber and which 3 are analog. We've all got paper, and there's somebody at the end who's got an iPad there. So Chris Dunning-Walton. Chris is the founder of Synam, and also started his own business called Infosec, grew that and sold that one on, went in over 20 people, and he's brought Synam together, which is a cluster of various cyber organisations, and in this part of the world, obviously there's a donut down the road that is world class. So Chris has been pulling together a network there to bring that know-how and knowledge, and as much expertise both in office and in hybrid there as well. So we're here this morning we're here till about 11 o'clock. The conversations on the panel will go to around about 10:30ish time, give or take, and we're going to have a discussion around 5 different areas that we believe are core themes in the workplace today. So those themes are people, which will look into culture, leadership, and we'll touch into well-being. Secondly, we'll look at productivity. So that's a strange phrase that not many people know what exactly it is. We'll look at performance now in the hybrid area there, and we'll move into planet and sustainability in that section. Then we'll look into purpose and meaning, motivation, and values. Then we'll look at money, profit, and actually how exceptional businesses who are doing all of what we've already spoke about make more money. So you can actually turn that sort of capitalist argument around. So we'll look at business outcomes and long-term success there. And then we'll finish with a nod to Workplace Interiors and Gravity as well. And we'll look at space and workplace design and how the physicality can be an enabler as well in driving performance in the organisation. So everybody here's got a unique perspective coming from different industries and different organisations on those subjects. What I'll do is take each theme. We'll start with people first, and we've got a series of questions that we'll put to the panel. We'll start with Andy. So he's got sort of 10 seconds to work out what he's about to go away and say. And then we'll walk down through the panel. What I'll invite you all to do is anything that they say that you've got a question on, write it down in those lovely Gravity Interior books that I see in front of you. I'm not sure whether you can put things through online as well to Max. So there's maybe some sort of technical way of putting a question into Max. So 10:30, we'll open it to the floor. So any questions that you've got either filtered into Max or he'll show of hands, then you've got an opportunity to question the panel on those points. So hold your questions, write them down till 10:30ish, and then we'll invite you to question the panel there as well. Okay, so Andy, we're going to start with your good self and people. And what does a people-first culture look like, inside Premier?
Can everybody hear all right? Okay, good. For us, it's exactly as the expression says. I mean, I think, we customer first and all of that went through in the 90s, and because I am that old, and in the 80s, and it's all about what goes out the door. So we started 36 years ago. Our longest serving employee is 36 years. Our average is 12 years. We have awards and milestones about that. So every 5 years you get another day's holiday, a gift. For instance, if James is still here, we've got tickets at Gloucester we give to people on their milestones if that's the thing they're into. There's an absolute intrinsic link between employee engagement and high performance. And if you get that bit right, you get the high performance. You cannot get high performance without employee engagement. So we put ourselves in those shoes. So we don't sit in a boardroom and think about what we know. So we have something called Biscuits with Barham, which is an awful name. But every month I meet with a cross-section of the business. No supervisors or managers are allowed. And I simply ask them what I can do to help their job and their performance be better. We literally have a cup of tea and biscuits and have a chat about it. And we don't sit in a boardroom and profess that we know demographic, age group, social strata and all that conflicts with that. So you just simply ask the people what they want and then you give it them. Okay. And Premier, this year you've become an Investors and People Gold. For the audience, what is this Investors and People and why is Gold exceptional here? So Investors and People is an external accreditation like ISO, but it's a voluntary thing. Has it helped us get any extra business? Possibly not. But it's once every 3 years, 2 years, somebody comes in and actually says, this is where you are. So we'd had it for 20 odd years at a standard level. So the standard, silver, gold and platinum. There's 9 themes, typical business themes such as employee engagement, efficiencies, etc., commitment to values. And you get scored on that. And the bar for gold is phenomenally difficult. There aren't many companies get it. A manufacturing business get it is exceptional, to be honest. A team of office professionals where you can get everybody together in 30 seconds and talk to them. But we've got about a quarter of our staff are remote, majority are factory-based. To get all of these guys on the same page, pulling together, but within a month of coming, most people can quote our values, mission, purpose. Okay. And so, getting that for us was a real rubber stamp that we're doing something right. Oh, well done. And you mentioned employee engagement a couple of times there. What is employee engagement? For me, it's daft little things. I mean, I started off on the shop floor, so I've got quite an affinity with the lads on our floor. And the pride that I've seen since we've doubled the business over the last 5 years, in terms of when we won an award. I announced, for instance, we had an off-site day. We shut the whole business down on a Friday. We went to Gloucester Rugby, and that's where we announced that we'd got Investors and People. There was a standing round of applause from everybody. They whooped, and they really were rooting for us to get that, which was quite staggering, really, and quite humbling. And I think, they've got as much investment in the business. I mean, that old saying about nobody will love your business as much as you do, but the guys on that floor and all the people in the offices and the remote people, they all know that we're behind this single purpose of changing lives for the better, which I'm sure will come to purpose later. And our mission's ensure and delivery of British-made kitchens. Just this week, we missed a side panel off a kitchen. The lad in transport jumped in his car and literally chased our lorry down to the services on the M4, threw it in the back of the lorry, and then that went on to London to do that because that's the commitment we've got. Nobody asked him to. We said, where is he? He said, he's jumped in his car and he's off. So, that's what we've got. And the IIP lady, when she walked round, said to one of the lads on the shop floor, so what do you do? He says, I ensure delivery of British-made kitchens, which is our mission statement. And that's when you've got it. Wow. Yeah. Wow.
So I mean that discretionary effort and being able to align what they do, to the sort of bigger picture here, and it sort of contrasts. Gallup do a survey every year, a global survey, which includes obviously UK as well. And the latest stats that just came out is 10% of British employees, so 1 in 10, are engaged. So meaning 9 out of 10 are disengaged here. So what you're doing is quite different than most in the UK, and that to an exceptionally high
Yeah, and I'm
as
sure,
well.
I'd also say this, getting people that line to you, I can teach anybody how to put a kitchen together, but I can't teach anybody how to have that. Yeah. So our probationary period is really, do these individuals fit into our team, into our philosophy, into our ethos, into that discretionary effort? And we're pretty quick at, moving people on that don't, but really harness those that do.
Brilliant. So we've heard eloquently what's going on in
I've forgotten the question.
Don't worry, I'll come back to that. Don't worry,
So that's a good start.
So I was going to come and say, in the publishing world, in the media world, what does a people-first culture look like inside So Publishing?
Well, I've forgotten all of the answers that I'd prepared, so this is literally going to be on the fly. Our team are, hugely important to us, and one of my team members is in the audience, so I absolutely can't tell any fibs up here. Our team are absolutely everything to us. So Publishing started from a garage in Gloucester, and it was 2 of us started the business, and we had that real startup entrepreneurial mission right from the beginning. And as 2 very, very committed workaholic individuals, our company grew. So I think the challenge for us is still a really small business by comparison to what Andy was saying. But I think with 16 of us, the challenge has been to find a team and embrace a team and empower a team to try and have that, you mentioned it yourself, like as a founder of a business, I feel like going above and beyond is like my absolute calling, but I would never expect that level of commitment from my team. However, we because we're such a small team, I think getting on and working really well together is incredibly important, and it's kind of been a real learning curve. I'm not an HR expert. I'm a journalist, and I think the learning curve of employing our first team member, we talked about it earlier, and growing a team very organically has been a really steep learning curve. And there's been trials and tribulations over the years, but I think I've forgotten the question again. Being people first employer is incredibly important to us, and without our team, really, we're nothing. So,
and in terms of flexible work, we had in the poll 71%.
Thanks for the reminder. So at So Publishing, some of the things that we do to ensure that we've got that really incredible work-life balance is our working hours are flexible in the day to allow commitments in life. So for myself, I do the school run every day, and that's really important for me. Other team members take their dog for a long walk in the morning and things like that. So I think there are pros and cons to working for a small business, and I'm really aware of that. And so I'm always trying to think, how can we lean into the pros of working for a small business? And some of that definitely is around the flexibility.
Yeah. And what about leadership and transparency? How does that work in your organisation?
Well, I try very hard to be very consistent, very clear communicator with my team, and I think that's really important to role model the behaviours that I expect our team to also showcase. I think I'm very open. I love your idea of, what did you call it, biscuits with Barnum?
Yeah, it's not very good.
I quite like that. So I have like a monthly open door coffee slot that our team can book in advance. But also, since moving to SLG, even in terms of the way that the office is structured, now I'm about to say it out loud. This perhaps isn't a good example, but I work in a glass office, so I'm very visible, so my team can see that I'm there and I'm working really hard. And the whole open door policy, it's just, my door is literally always open, but I have those specific time slots that people can book in case they don't feel like they can just pop in.
Now, you've got a lot of hybrid going on.
Yes.
Yeah. What about career development? How does that work inside Gloss when people are remote?
Well, to go back to that original point about the pros and cons that we recognise in running a small business, I think that with such a small team, we are really committed to thinking about the individual's career growth. So I think in my industry, you know, if you're a journalist, for example, there's very clear steps of progression. And I think seeing the progression potential is really important, but I try and really recognise actually where people's individual talents and where their interests lie. And so we try and carve an individual sort of career path for our team to follow.
Hold on. And recognition, how does recognition work in Gloss?
That's a really interesting question, because we have a hybrid working pattern. Some of my team are in the office 1 day a week, and I think there's a real learning curve in terms of communication, how we're doing that in real life versus how we're doing that, you know, on Teams. We have certain things that we do to guarantee that the team are in all together, and so for example, we do a monthly full team meeting that we had yesterday, and one of the things I really like about it is we finish the meeting by talking about our highlight of the month. So we do that in a work way, and we also do that in a personal way. And I genuinely think if it wasn't for that sort of nudge, I wouldn't know half the things I know about my team. And similarly, they wouldn't know that about me. So that's a really nice uplifting way that we talk about celebrations.
Yeah.
And we're a very celebratory organisation, and you know, we'll congratulate team members for certain successes, and we talk about our wins for the month and that sort of thing. So
I guess that speaks to inclusion and belonging.
yes, it definitely does, Stuart. Thank you.
Anything you want to add to that?
Honestly, I feel like my team members should be on the stage talking about like actually whether it's true or not, but there's definitely a motivation, and I think because the business has grown organically, and because being a manager is not my natural necessarily something I've been trained to do, and being a business leader is not something that I necessarily wanted for myself, if I'm really honest. But I think it's been very organic and a real learning curve, and I think I've been learning as I go along. And you should ask my team, I suppose, if that creates inclusivity.
Yeah, well said. And well done as well with Publishing, because most businesses, 9 out of 10 businesses that start up fail within a decade, and there you are now, 16 or 18 years, young. There, so and getting to become a small business is a really, really tough thing. So
I think there's a certain stubbornness in that. Yeah.
So well done.
Stubbornness and ambition in equal measure, I think. Well, thanks, Stuart.
So we're coming to almost like you on your own wickets now, head of people, talking about people there as well. So what does a people-first culture look like inside workplace and interiors?
I guess I'm going to be slightly controversial with this one maybe, and I don't think what you guys are talking about is people first necessarily. I started by having a look at the definition of people first. What do we mean by that? And you go to ChatGPT or Google, what that says is, in a situation whereby you've got people and the bottom line, for example, in a business, you're going to put people before the bottom line. I've never worked in any business whereby if that comes up, people always come first. So I don't think it's possible. I think what we're talking about is being people-centric.
Yeah, I agree, actually. Yeah.
And when you look to create or encourage a culture, you are always having somebody in the room who is thinking about people. And so I think historically it's probably been misinterpreted as long as you have a HR person at the top table who can sense check everybody else when they're making these commercial decisions, that's enough. It's really not. I think if you have a culture, you have a mindset across everybody that is making decisions in that business. And so that whenever a decision is made, there are questions asked by that individual. How is this going to impact my people? What opportunities are there for people in this environment? So just thought I'd throw that in there.
So people-centric inside workplace interiors, give us an idea what that looks like.
Yeah, I think when we think about the environment that we have, I know that we're going to come on to this a little bit later, but we build the environment around what our people need. And so as we know, and we're going to go on to, we'll talk a bit about hybrid working. Our offices are set up for that. We support agile working as well. So one thing I was speaking to Jason about, I think he's in here somewhere, but he's the head of design and build at Gravity. We have individuals that maybe don't want to be in the office all the time. They don't get their energy from being around people all the time. And so those individuals might just come into the office for meetings. And so we make it easy for that to happen. And I'll go into it later, but even just in the thought process that goes into creating the spaces. So the acoustics, right? That's a big thing. If we get the acoustics wrong in an environment, that can impact how somebody feels every day.
So let's pull it back then into business then, and let's look at business decisions. How are business decisions then made inside workplace interiors while considering people?
Yeah, it does start at the senior leadership level. So I am lucky enough to sit at that table. And so I am constantly on the shoulder of everybody in that room. What do we think the impact is that going to be? And so where you have people then who are starting to understand they always have to think about those things, that then proliferates through to the leaders that sit in their teams.
Okay. And levels of coaching that's then going on in the organisation, development, what are you doing there?
Yeah, I guess that's the beauty of us being a smaller business, I guess, is I've worked in bigger businesses, 4,500 people, 600-700 people. It's very difficult to get consistency across that leadership group. In this environment, what we've done is we've stood up 2 leadership programs that run across a 2-year period, and we've captured and brought all of the leaders along with us. So we're getting that message across everybody at exactly the same time. And then the beauty of having me, I guess, in the business as a qualified coach as well, is that I'm always around. I'm observing, I'm coaching, offering feedback. So keeping people honest, I guess, what you would say.
Brilliant. And so your good self, people first or people-centric culture in the different environments that you've been in. What does it look in cyber world?
So I think it's a really interesting question, and we've touched on a lot that I could talk about already. What we're talking about here is that intersectionality between people and profit, and we're going to come on to performance and how we work with that. And those 2 things aren't mutually exclusive in a business. We want to create an environment where people can perform to a place where they are profitable to the business. We're not running charities. We're here to make money, and that's a good thing. Greed is good. No one will say that, but this is about building a business that ultimately is valuable to the people that own it and is able to pay people well, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy within the business. I've been lucky in my business when I owned a recruitment business, built it to 20 people, sold it by an MBO. But in that 17-year process, I also met with, it must be hundreds, 400, 500 odd companies. So I actually went and saw their office space. I spoke to the CEOs, the MDs, the owners, the senior leadership team. So it's both the experience of my own business and what I try to build within the working space to maximize performance and thereby profitability whilst being a good person, hopefully. None of my team are here, so I was an amazing boss and just great, fantastic. But trying to do that and also one of the things I thought, people first is great if you have the right people. And how many times have we had issues where, especially at senior leadership level, somebody joins a business where that person isn't right for your business, but we're still accommodating them to a place where it becomes a real problem. And that so it's great to hear, Andy, you've done a great job with your business, and I know Sogos is fantastic, Gravity. I think we've all had experiences where we've gone and we haven't got this right. And then you can't put a people first or people-centric approach, because that person isn't asking for reasonable things, isn't performing to the level that they should be performing. So I think it comes hand in glove with ensuring that you maintain clarity on what you mean by the right people. That comes back to culture, which you talked about. I think the culture of a business is underlined by the values that are lived. Every company website I've seen says we are a people first business. We are wonderful. We look after our people. We care about the environment. Nobody says we're a bunch of, and we are going to beast everybody and not do what we say we're going to do. Everybody says they're a fantastic place to work. Are you? How do you define that? How do you measure that? And I think for me, it was about living the values that you actually have within the business. Do your values enable you to make decisions that then you can actually go back and say, okay, we've got this difficult decision to make. What are our values? These are our 3 core values. Okay, against our 3 core values, our decision has to be this, does it not? Yes, it does. So you've clearly got that in your business, and it's really great to see that as long as you have the right people, as long as you live the values that you aspire to achieve within your business by actually demonstrating the decisions that you make are underpinned by those values, then I think you can create something really exciting. The last thing, we're in a very competitive world at this moment in time, where people have a choice over the kinds of environments they can work with. So this is about ensuring that you are better than your competitors. Because if you're not, you will lose your people to your competitors as well. So like I said, this is about being a great human being who genuinely cares around the environment you create for your people so that they can perform, whilst also saying, that's also good for me as a business owner because it makes us more profitable. It keeps my people within my business rather than losing them to somebody else.
Brilliant. Can I just sort of touching a little bit on leadership behaviours there as well. So I'll sweep back around the panel again now.
So I just add one thing, though, Stuart, to that last topic. That's all right. I think people feel sometimes or assume that you can just arrive somewhere and you are that way. We are a people first or people centric business. It doesn't work like that. I think you have to constantly be sense checking. Are we doing the right things by our people?
Yeah, iteration. And I mean, I'll maybe touch back on that one as well, because I'll go even further with people-centric. I think it's one of 6 different factors that are integrated, and try to get the right balance there, because one will play onto another. So we'll come back to that. In terms of, you touched on care, so that was really interesting. So what other sort of leadership behaviours lead to the building of trust to drive performance in an organisation? So what sort of leadership behaviours are you encouraging inside Prem?
Well, first of all, I don't have a head of HR or an HR department.
Okay.
I've got 135 staff, and if you're a manager, you manage your team, you manage your individuals. You have the training to do that, so we don't need somebody on our shoulder telling us, because we do it.
Well.
And I encourage that because I lead from the front, like I'm sure we all do. So in terms of leadership behaviours, we call it out. So that person that comes into the senior team, in 10 years I've got it wrong 4 times. They haven't seen the end of a year. We've had a performance conversation, we've had a without prejudice conversation, and we've ended up with a compromise agreement. And then I've put my hand up to the business and said, that was my recruitment, my mistake, I've got that wrong. So what that encourages is everybody else to stand up and say, recruitment is just a lottery. There's things you can do to get to a point. Salespeople are the worst to hire because the whole point is they can sell themselves. And so it's kind of a 50-50 roll of a dice, but I'm back to, we act quick. As soon as you allow that individual to remain in the business, you're eroding your values. And then if people can see that we are dealing with performance, everybody else says, that's okay, I'm working in a fair organisation. As soon as I've got to pick the slack up from that individual because I know they're not pulling their weight, that's the start of the slippery slope. So what we do though is we use investors and people as that person on our shoulder because you have an annual audit. And trust me, they are tough. The level of step up to gold, I thought it would be tough, but I didn't realise it was going to be that tough. And the amount of people they interviewed throughout the organisation, we had a 84% return on the questionnaire that people fill in before they come into the business. So then they interrogate our leadership team on an individual basis, then a team basis, etc. So that's how we keep ourselves honest in that. But we also ask people, so we've got a way where, you know, everyone calls me hand on the shop floor and the leadership team. I haven't got another director. I don't really have an SLT. I have a management team. And every one of us is hands-on. Nobody in our building has an office. I tore them all down. So I don't have a open door policy. I just sit with everybody else. And then you feel the buzz. You can feel the energy in the building go up and down. You can walk the shop floor and I can feel it. And that's the important bit. If you've got that fabric feel of your big organisation, you tackle stuff really, really quickly rather than be hidden in some higher echelon than you come down once in a blue moon. So I think leadership behaviours we're in a place with our organisation where I think we're so established with so many long-term people. They tell me, there's things that they tell me in those biscuits meetings that I'm surprised they tell me, but it's because they care, that they know that this is an issue that we need to deal with. And then we just deal with it head on. You know, I'm a reasonably competitive individual. So, you know, if we don't, our competition do, and I truly believe that, but you've only got to be 1% better than your competition. You don't need to play your hand and go streets ahead. Keep that in your back pocket for later. So we're always just looking to stay 1% ahead.
Inside Soul Publishing, leadership behaviours that drive trust and performance, what would they be?
I think they come back to, I mentioned it before, but I think clarity, communication and consistency. I think if everyone's really clear on what we're aiming for, I think that clarity of mission is there. Consistency, if we say we're going to do something, we do it. You know, we're all incredibly busy, but I think role modelling that consistency is really important to build the trust of the team. And what was my last C that I said?
You've got follow through.
Communication, yeah, just being really clear about what my role is, what I'm doing. In those monthly meetings, I'm sharing like, these are my goals for this month, this is what I'm aiming to do, and I have that sort of accountability there, that if the next month rolls on where I haven't done it, then, you know, I would be embarrassed. So I feel like a certain sense of pride that I do what I say I do.
So there's some integrity there. So you say what you do, doing what you're saying.
And I think there's a bit of competitiveness as well, like definitely. So it's been mentioned a few times, but we see what we do at So Gloss as we're revolutionising regional media. We don't want to be another, dare I say it, Gloss Live. We're doing something different, and I think that revolutionary spirit is really important and is a real motivator, and it's something that personally really drives me. You know, as a journalist, I always wanted to be first to a story, and as a business owner, you know, I want So Gloss to do really well, not just for me but for my whole team.
Well, we come to you, Alan, and some of the prep work that you've done. I'll just read the first line, actually, only because it echoes what Chris said. It all starts by showing that you care. So leadership behaviours leading to trust, performance in workplace interiors. What does that look like?
I think I'll go broader than that, right? And I'll maybe come back down to work. But I think it is that. You build trust with people that follow you into battle as such, because you show that you give a shit. I think you care about people. And I think if you show that you care about people and you have that genuine level of care, you take the time to understand what they want and what they need. And I think until you understand what somebody wants and needs, how can you get the best out of that person? How can you drive performance in that person? I don't think you can. Actually, you're just hitting them on the head with what you think they need, which is nonsense. And I think individuals that care, I think, they care about the business and the people. And I think when you care about the business, you think about the future. And so there's a really good book, Leadership Plain and Simple, by somebody called Steve Ratcliffe. It's not one of yours, I'm afraid, Stuart. But in that book, he talks about great leaders are always up to something. And so if you have somebody who has a vision, who is future focused, people want to follow that.
So something on visionary bit there as well. So Chris, coming back to you, I know you started there by saying living the values is important and engendering care is as well. What other leadership behaviours are important in from your perspective to drive trust and performance?
So I'm a big Simon Sinek fan, and so a lot of what he talks about resonated with me within my own business, and I think we trust is so key, and I think we can all agree now that building trust within your business and your personal lives is absolutely fundamental to building a great business. There's a wonderful thing called the trust equation. I'd encourage you to check it out. You must be familiar, Stuart. It's a fantastic thing that my wife's a leadership coach, and she introduced it to me a couple of years ago. It's great for business, but it's also fantastic for your personal life. It talks about one of the key fundamentals being about self-orientation, okay? And that's, why are you doing this? Why are you interested in that person's development? Is it just for you, or are you genuinely interested in that person and enabling that person to be better at what they do? And it's the same in your personal life. We all have probably friends who only call you when there's a drama. Right, you're useful to them when there's a drama. They don't hear them for months. So their self-orientation is very much fixed around what's in it for them. And I'd encourage, personally for me, there's probably been a journey over the last few years of exiting those people gently out of my circle, because they're not, you want a reciprocal relationship which is built on trust. Within your business is exactly the same. And trust is always about trusting first. I don't think trust should be earned. I think trust should be freely given and reciprocated back. Do you know what I mean? Because sometimes we think, I'm not going to trust them until I can. But I think that will be a self-fulfilling prophecy in saying, well, they're not going to trust you then. You're going to get burnt sometimes. You're going to have experiences where somebody doesn't quite live up to the expectations you hope that they have. And then you need to make a decision. Can you bring them up to a level where you want them to be, or are you going to exit them from the business? But always trusting people to do the right thing has always been a key thing of my own business. And when I reflect on the businesses that I've seen, the leaders have been trusted by their employees. Yeah, they're the calm, all the things you said, the 4 C's, but I was thinking calmness as well in the storm. COVID hits. Don't panic. It's all going to be fine. Internally, you're going, oh my God. But you are the calm in the center of the storm, and that business owner, I know business owners who've been like a yo-yo. 1 minute they'll be happy, the next minute they'll be coming out shouting, screaming, ranting that we haven't made those numbers. Does that engender high performance? Some people might say yes. For me, not what I've seen as being the most effective area. So I think as a leader, that trust, building that trust, but also giving trust freely is a really key characteristic. Last thing on the sales side, from a leadership perspective again, how many times do we promote the top salesperson to become head of sales management? And then you go, oh my God, you're awful as a manager. Why are you so bad? Sometimes the best salespeople I've learnt should stay as salespeople. They should not be anywhere near leadership roles, because that's not what they're good at. They're really good at their self-orientation is make money. I want to be successful. I want to go and make money. The moment you give them a team, which some people, and the top salespeople, will go, now I deserve to have a team. And then the most awful managers you can ever think of. But of course they are, because their self-orientation is all about them, making them money. And again, Simon Sinek talks about when you're looking to promote somebody, who's the person in your office that everybody would go and ask for advice? or confide in or trust. That's your leader. That's your person. They might be a middle performer, but they're somebody that people trust and will learn and will freely give their time to. So again, from a people point of view, when we're looking at our leaders of the future, are we measuring the right things to ensure that we continue to have the right behaviours that underpin both performance and trust within our business?
I think the only thing I would add to that is leadership happens not just in a management role, but it happens if you are senior in a business. And so one thing we talk about in the leadership development programs that we've introduced is the idea of the shadow I cast, and thinking and being aware about how you show up, that being down to how you walk in the morning and how do you greet people. Do you go straight to your desk and focus on you as you're talking about, or actually are you taking that responsibility seriously and coming in and checking on people? How are you doing? And it's everything else beyond that.
Very good, very good. And
if I may, I totally agree with that. And I'd say leadership should not be based on role title. Same on a rugby pitch or whatever. You know, you'll have the captain, but then you'll have people who step up in those moments and go, "We're going to win this. Come on." And that, do you know what I mean? So you're looking for people that love the business enough, the mission, that go, "I'm going to jump in the car and take this because it needs to get done." And that for me would be a leadership quality. You're thinking that's great.
brilliant. So that's the first P dealt with. Well done, panel. I think, so that's
Only
people.
3 hours left.
Yeah. So and I've deliberately, I know you want to talk more about people than some of the other ones. So the second P, I expect might provoke a different discussion: productivity. And it's one of those words that I know from some of the research that we've done is just not discussed in boards. It's a word that is alien, really. And if it's alien, how can we then drive it forward? So from what I want to do here is look at productivity and performance in a hybrid area. So we'll start again with yourself, Andy, and look at productivity in a sort of post-pandemic world there. From a Premier Kitchen perspective, productivity, what does it mean and what does it look like now compared to before COVID?
So when we came out of COVID, I'll be honest, I think businesses fell into two camps. You buried your head in the sand, took furlough, who took a huge loan out for very low interest rates and survived. Or you came out swinging and thought, well, if we're going down, we'll go down fighting. We were definitely the latter. So we changed a lot about our organisation at the same time. One of the things we did was put a strategy in place that we called our 4 Ps: people, planet, profit, but we included productivity as a main headline strategy. So we said in 4 years, we want our productivity, which we measured as revenue per head, to increase by 30%. So that was from 2022 to 2026. We've already increased it by 40%. So productivity, there's a difference between output and efficiency, and people need to understand those definitions because they get bandied around differently. Output is how many things am I doing? Productivity or efficiency is what's the rate per head or rate per £100,000 of revenue, or however you choose that's appropriate to your business. So we make a kitchen cabinet every 45 seconds, fully assembled. And so we have output, which is a rate per hour, but the productivity and efficiency is what's that expressed as labour costs, for instance. So, but I've always been in manufacturing, and usually you have a plethora of measures, and everybody latches onto the one that usually best paints them in the best light. We just boil it down to one. So, for instance, we have how many units have we dispatched in a week against the wage bill for the whole of the shop floor, and hours, and that's it. So 1.25 units per man hour is our measure. Everything else is a subset of that, and that's a reason or an explanation of why we've either overachieved, underachieved, or hit it bang on. But you just need to understand the measure, but so do our office, and so does everybody else. So that's how we measure productivity, but we've got it as like I say, it's as equal to profit. So we very much said that if we get our people culture right, productivity will improve, that equals profit, and then we can invest that back into the planet, the people, and the productivity. So we've got a load of new machinery come in, 3 million quid's worth and all of that sort of stuff. If I hadn't got production right, I wouldn't have got the output right, I wouldn't have made the money to then reinvest. So it's the especially manufacturing, it's such a critical element of it that I think
the people and productivity of those. Profit is the equals part of the equation. The productivity and the people is the two to get right.
It's really interesting. 40% gain in productivity, and the UK is 17% behind the G7 average. There it's 30% behind Germany and America, and here you are, performing at that kind of level. So fantastic. Well done. What about in So Publishing, productivity post-COVID?
Productivity is a really interesting term, I guess. For us, pre-COVID, I agree there were two sort of different routes to take when the pandemic hit. And this isn't a word I've used for a long time, but I'm going to bring it back into fashion, pivot. So at So Gloss, we pivoted, I would say, we were wholly lifestyle focused up until the pandemic hit. So our large partners, some of them are here today, but so we worked with organisations, like pubs and hotels and sports facilities, etc. And when the pandemic hit, obviously everything was in lockdown, and those partners weren't making money, so they certainly weren't spending money to promote those types of businesses. So we launched, to pivot, we launched our business section. And that's just how, in terms of adaptability and, how we tackled that. And we changed our business to also focus on supporting the business community in Gloucestershire. So some of our biggest partners now are, financial services, IT, cyber, etc., etc. So that's just a little backstory to how, as business leaders, we tackled something that realistically should have closed our business. And in terms of productivity, we are very process driven, very organized at So Gloss, and we use lots of different ways of measuring things, like you've talked about that, because we see that as a real motivator. So we have Alad's probably going to tell me this is totally wrong now, so I dread to say it, but we have certain KPIs for our team members, and I hope Amy agrees, but we find that that's really motivating. So in terms of productivity for our what we call our creative hub, our journalists, they know what they're aiming for in terms of quality and in terms of output of stories that we're producing, and then off the back of how many stories they're producing, we're looking at how that engages with our audience, and then we're tweaking that every month. Should we write more of these type of stories, for example? On the sales side, we have KPIs around sales activity. So from a productivity perspective, there are lots of metrics that we can use to support. Has this been a good month? Has this not been a good month? Sales revenue is obviously one of the most important. But also we look at, we're really keen to not micromanage in any way. So we trust our team, to go back to that, to know what they're aiming for and know what they're doing. And for example, with our sales team, if they're hitting certain KPIs, we're not keeping a check on where were they at 3:00 on a Friday afternoon, for example. We have that trust in our team that they know what they're doing and they're doing it and they're doing a great job. Yeah, so productivity, that's how we measure it.
Well done. And if you look into productivity, there's 4 key drivers, and one of them is what you just said. So having productivity measures there. A second one is what your colleague to the right has said from the beginning. People-centric. So it's a second one. So we come back to this aspect of what is it like in the workplace interiors world, or the workplace world post-pandemic.
I think, again, I'm going to go up a level just first. And from my own experience, I think pre-pandemic, a lot of trust was built in terms of, I think my team are productive, from seeing people doing things. And then I think in manufacturing and other areas, it's easier to have lots of metrics and KPIs around it. But if you work in a people function, for example, it's a bit more difficult. And then all of a sudden, the pandemic happened, and you couldn't see anybody. couldn't see your team, you couldn't see what they were up to. And I think there was an element of presenteeism pre-pandemic, bums on seats. It's happening. There is stuff happening in front of us. I think it forced more proactive people management after the pandemic, because all of a sudden you're going, well, I need to make sure that we are being proactive and productive, and that we've got outcomes happening. And so if you boil that down to what that is, it's making sure that your teams know exactly what's expected of them. If you don't have that, the whole thing falls over. So clear expectations, and then that proactive management along the way is, I'm going to work with you, support you, I'm going to give you feedback, I'm going to coach you, I'm going to make sure that I'm removing any blockers that you have to that productivity. Because again, I think historically people took that for granted as people managers, and they've waited for people to come to them. The world has changed now. I think we have to, as managers, have to be in there supporting.
Brilliant. So what you're saying there is there's a focus that's needed. There's something there about collaboration as well, and there's another aspect there about flexibility as well.
Yeah.
Chris, from I probably guess what you're about to go away and say. Post-pandemic world, the world of cyber, world of that's it's more hybrid. What does it look like in terms of productivity?
So I think we all of the things I agree with the panel around KPIs and performance within the individual, but as a leader, really becoming obsessed with what tools we can give our team to be as productive as they can. AI is a wonderful, amazing, brilliant thing, and the more that we can use the tools that are available to us, with a security conscious around it as well, because there are some implications around that, but enabling, having the right tool set for your teams to be as productive as they possibly can, and almost have that obsession around, have we got the right tools to enable this team? We're spending a huge amount, have we got the right office space to enable a really productive team? You can always see when a business is struggling because they'll cut back on things. Oh, we don't need that new system. We'll use the one we've got. It's a bit expensive, isn't it? Whereas the ones that are really going for it are constantly investing in the tooling that they have to enable them to go even faster and their team to be even better. And that mindset, I think, is also really interesting. I ran a security consultancy last year for one of my clients. I ran their security consultancy business through a company called Crossword. And the mindset within that was a professional services business. We would win work. Let's say we won a piece of work that was based on 20 days worth of work, but it was a fixed price piece of work. And I talked to the consultant, how long do you think it's going to take to do this piece of work? Oh, 20 days. Really? You sure you can, because we can probably do it a bit quicker. I probably could do it in 16. But I'm worried that I don't get the 4 days, because we at that point we were measuring, number of days, what your percentage of days worked, right? And people were freaking out; they were below 80% utilization rates. If you're in professional services, utilization rates are really important. I said, well, listen, if we could do that in 16 days, it doesn't matter. It's not going to change the cost of the client. The client's fine; they're happy. But I'll give you 20 days worth of utilization. You do it in 16, then you can use those other 4 days to work on something else. So you can go 120% utilization over these next 4 weeks. Sound good? Because you're going to be measured against that at the end of the year. Oh, that sounds amazing. Yeah, that'd be great. But I thought I'd just do 20 days. But you need 20 days. No, I could do 16. Great. So again, they didn't. It was fascinating to me, because it's a bit like Emperor's New Clothes. I jumped into this new role thinking, I'm going to have to learn a lot. And actually, what I found was little things like that. Just thinking slightly differently about, are we being productive, or are we just doing what we've always done? And the answer usually is, you can probably find ways to be a lot more productive by just having a slightly different lens on what productive actually means. Potentially, but otherwise.
Very good. So you're talking there about being a bit more strategic, a bit more thoughtful on what productive means, and of course that brings in the third and the fourth part of what productivity is. So the use of technology, clearly big in post pandemic, and of course now we're at the early stages of the use of AI in productivity there as well. You also touched on the workspace and how actually the physicality. And we'll come back to that, I know, a little bit later. and of course the operations, how you lay out things, can actually dramatically increase productivity as well. So that's our second P done. Well done, panel. We're on the third one now, and that's purpose. And here we'll dive into meaning and perhaps motivation and values that bit more. So Andy, I'll come at you first. What is purpose inside Prem, and how does that drive motivation, loyalty?
So I think the first thing is mission, vision, purpose, values. I think having a clear definition of what inside your business you mean by each of those is really, really key, because they're not interchangeable. The way we define it is that our mission of ensuring delivery of British-made kitchens is what we do. So that's what we do every single day. We do that to enable us to fulfill our purpose, and our purpose is changing lives for the better. That's a multi-faceted statement. That's written for not marketing purposes. I think, we don't have a marketing department either. So we're not... That's been my whole career. It's got to come from within. So we ran workshops and we kind of got the guys' opinion. So our values, for instance, were written by the lads on the shop floor and the offices. So that's how we did it. So the changing lives for the better is that the more successful we are, the more we can then change the lives of all of the colleagues who work alongside me, so they can have discretionary things in life and do things that they want to do. The other bit that changed our life is we make 200,000 kitchen cabinets a year, and that's how we measured our business, and there's roughly 10 in a kitchen. When we reframed our business to we make 20,000 kitchens, and with each one there's a family that are going to have 20 years of enjoyment of that, and they're going to have Christmas and birthdays and birth, deaths, marriages, breakups in that. And so therefore, why shouldn't that be the best thing that we can possibly make for them? So therefore, we humanised a box that's made of chipboard. That, I'd say, was the single biggest springboard that gave us a leap, to be honest, in our organisation, so that people actually could visualise, mum, dad, 2 kids sat around that, and how we did that. So that humanisation of the purpose that people could actually genuinely get behind is it. So the vision bit didn't really come into it. It was about that, and it's everything comes off that. So when we make a business decision or capital investment, it's simply, will it help ensure delivery of British-made kitchens, and will it change people's lives for the better? And those two things, if they don't come up with yes, they probably won't get signed off.
And inside Soul Publishing, what does purpose look like, and how does that drive motivation, loyalty?
I really like what you just said, Andy, actually, around the humanising. And I think, it's really important to me that I'm authentic on this stage, and I'm not just spouting a load of what it says on our website about who we are and what we do. So I think purpose is really, really important. And if I was just going to quote our website, it would be around celebrating Gloucestershire and as an incredible place to live, work and visit. And I think that side of things is something that everybody embraces. But I don't think we're clear enough about that purpose internally necessarily. So I think as staff, we probably can do a good elevator pitch if we were to meet you over a coffee. And I think Amy would do an incredible job of pitching to you if she came for a meeting. But I think internally, it's not something we talk about enough. So I feel like that's been a good learning curve for me to bring back to my workplace and share and talk a little bit more with my team, because I think purpose is really important. So we have the revolutionising regional media side of things, but also as a title, the celebration side of things. And I don't think we talk about that entirely as much as maybe we could. So, yeah.
And what about inside workplace and interiors? What does purpose look like, and how does that link to motivation, loyalty?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I guess I'd follow on a little bit from what you're saying, in that we're doing a piece of work at the moment to just understand how we want to articulate that, and then to kind of weave that through the other key areas like values, as we're going to talk about. But what's really interesting about workplace interiors is that the business has grown at an incredible rate and been incredibly successful without an articulation of a clear purpose. And the driving force for that, for me, has been the family that run the business, and the passion that those guys have and the belief that they have. People have wanted to follow that. So you haven't necessarily needed to define a clear purpose. We're at a point now where we're bigger and a bit more established. There are more people coming in. So sometimes that isn't going to be enough. And so we're doing a piece of work now to just really be able to articulate that so that we can go on, and I know we're going to cover this next, and utilize that as fire, right? Because that's what purpose is, fire in the belly, isn't it? It's creating an emotional attachment so that you get behavior, the kinds of behavior that you want, loyalty, productivity, output. So we're working on it, is what I would say.
And Chris, in the world of cyber, purpose, motivation, loyalty, how does that look with the organisations you're working with?
So I think COVID was a really interesting, and we forget about it, don't we? It was such a bad thing that happened. But I think it really reminded people that time is not infinite, that we are fallible, that we will die. We have a certain amount of time on this planet, okay? And every day that goes past is a day where you're getting closer to the end. That's fun, isn't it, for a morning?
It suddenly went.
But this is really interesting, because once you start thinking like that, once you start realizing, and people are thinking like that, people are changing careers, they're changing companies, they're setting up their own businesses because they suddenly realize, hold on a minute, I'm not going to get this time back. So the purpose around a business needs to be more than just what you do. It's how you change and affect the world we live in. You've talked about it very eloquently about, it's not just a kitchen we make. It's a family unit. It's something that is really tangible. I could visualize that Christmas meal. Yeah, with So Glossy. Again, you're working on that as well. But I think the best businesses are the ones that clearly are able to communicate how they change the world we live in. And that can be on a small basis, or it could be on a Apple-sized global basis. Apple go on about it like it's going out of fashion. People still buy Apple despite their devices not necessarily being as good as a lot of other devices. So on the cybersecurity front as well, there are hundreds of cybersecurity consultancies out there. And the best ones have a real clarity on how they are going to change, or how they're going to enable their clients to do things better, and what they're going to do that for their teams, that means that those people have a better life. So I think when we're thinking about effective purpose within the business, it needs to be more than what you do. It is the Simon Sinek why we're doing this, but on a basis that really hits you personally. People don't now live to work, they work to live. Despite us as business leaders thinking, I know that everybody just wants to come and work for my business. They don't. They want to go home and they want to enjoy their personal lives. So you need to be able to create something that is mission and purpose driven, so that they still do it despite it being tough. GCHQ is a great example of this. Their pay is ridiculously bad for the quality of people that they have. Okay. And people can leave and walk into jobs that are 2 times, 3 times the salaries that they're on. Yet people still do it. Why? Because they are protecting the UK government. Whether you like or don't like what GCHQ does, their mission is so powerful that people who are highly educated, highly skilled, highly sought after in the real world do it despite all those things, because they believe fervently and passionately in the mission. So taking that approach into your own business and making it more than just building kitchen cabinets, we're changing people's lives, and then it becomes something really exciting and something that, again, creates.
Thank you. So hopefully the audience are now convinced of doing the first 3 Ps now, and it leads us to the 4th P of profit, because there's plenty of evidence now out there that purpose-led organisations outperform others in their sectors. So Andy, come to you first. How does that sort of softer investment in culture and design, if we want to call that, how you're leading the organisation, translate into return on investment?
So when we launched our strategy of the 4 Ps, we were an £11 million business, £100,000 a year profit. Last year, ending 31st of March, 22 million sales, 2 million profit. With not a doubling of staff, about a 40% increase in heads, hence the productivity piece. So it's a multifaceted formula, but it's okay, we talk about profit. The first thing I did when I took over from Paul as MD 11 years ago, I put the P&L up. He's a chartered accountant, so he held on to something quick. So when I sit with the teams every month, I go through the P&L with them, the last set of management accounts. But in a really, really simplistic way, if you want more money left in your bank account at the end of the month, you've got to earn more or spend less. And that's what all running a business is. It's nothing more complicated than that. And as soon as we make it complicated, it's either to justify, talking about self-orientation, it's either to justify your own position, cover up an insecurity, or to try and convince people. And it is that simple. So when we break it down to that simple way, we've sold this, it cost this, we made this. But we back it up that when we have a good year, we reinvest that in people. I don't necessarily increase basic salaries because it's hard to take that off, but we really have a really self-rewarding bonus scheme. And so we've all got some skin in the game from all 135 of us. Plus we talk openly to our suppliers about that, that if they help us, the more successful I am and the cheaper I can buy my products, the more I can sell. So therefore there's a volume game in it for them. So we're very open about money and talking about that. So I think the first thing is to talk about it. So many businesses still hide that. Or you only talk about it when it's good, not when it's bad. We're happy to talk about it either way. I mean, we've had some really bad times. A lot of our stuff goes into social housing. So just being a manufacturer isn't enough. I think most marketing now doesn't seem to be about buy that bottle of water. It's about the experience of drinking that water. And by the way, we do a really good bottle of water. That's like a secondary part of it. So instead of selling the kitchen, we sell that experience of being in that kitchen. Plus, we have a huge amount of Planet credentials. Our factory is powered by solar panels, and all of our wood waste is burnt, and that creates the heat for our factory. We're just working on something now to take the excess heat, put it through an opposite of a ground source, and then we're going to be able to air condition the factory for the summer. So we'll be able to cool it in the summer, heat it in the winter. So we're working on all that kind of stuff. So we really become this self-sustainable. But you've got to earn money to be able to do that. It's all investment decisions. So there's absolutely a hard payoff, and I don't think, talking about that's an embarrassment.
Well said. And return on investment in sole publishing for investment in the softer side, what does that
I
look
think
like?
it's been a real sort of journey for myself as an entrepreneur. I think if we go back to the origin story of So Gloss, when it was launched at my parents' garage, everything was about keeping our costs as low as humanly possible. We didn't pay ourselves a salary for a few years. And so I think having that sort of frugal mentality is really hard to relinquish in some ways. But I think it's probably with a little bit of a nudge from our team, actually. When we started recruiting and growing our team, one of my staff actually went to the SLG offices, the opening, and she came back and she was like, wow, wouldn't it be cool if we could work somewhere like that? Wouldn't it be cool if we could have some swingy chairs and some huge plants? And I was like, oh, it would be really cool, but who's going to pay for it? So to go back to business 101, obviously, if you're not making that money, you can't spend it. So I think feeling like a cash-strapped entrepreneur, that was the first part of our journey, really. And it was only when we had team to look after and team members to consider, really. Like, I could probably still be working on my lap from a laptop and, struggling, and I wouldn't necessarily have invested in nice things like gorgeous offices if it was just about me. So I think seeing the softer side, is that how you described it? The softer investment. I think I had to, give myself a stern talking to, really, and be like, it is an investment. The working environment of my team is really important. It's kind of difficult to measure that, I suppose, and we talk about return on investment quite a lot. And I think where there's woolly sort of metrics for that, it does come down to, you know, what you value and what your team values. So for us, we started in this leaky, cold garage, mice running around. I'm terrified of mice. It was an absolute nightmare. And then we slowly grew. So I think our physical workplace has been a real representation of how the business has grown. And I think when we first got our, you know, our first proper office and we had keys to go to a workplace, that was a real sense of achievement. And do we need to exit the building? Okay. And I think there's a real sense of pride there in terms of that, like, physical manifestation of growth in the business. And so from there, we had offices on beautiful Regency Townhouse on Imperial Square. And I think, you know, that step up allowed us to have partners coming to our office and using that as sort of a showcase to show that, you know, we're a real business. And I think sometimes when you're a digital business, you know, people would say to me, oh, do you have offices? And I'm like, yeah, of course. Like, why wouldn't we have an office? Because we probably all could work remotely if we needed to. And then in April this year, we moved to SLG's offices, and that was a very, really nice turn of events, really, that there was construction work going on in our physical office. And we reached out to the business community, and we know Miles, who owns SLG, and he said, do you want to come and share an office with us? And it just felt like a real full circle moment that actually... I think the team really responded very well to that we, you know, we've got a skateboard boardwalk. I haven't ever seen anybody skateboard on it, but it's cool. And there's, well, no, you know, there's graffiti, and it's a really nice environment. And to go back to encouraging people to come back to the workplace, I think it can only help, really. And I find it really inspiring working with a global business and, you know, seeing that ambition. And I think you'd have to ask my team realistically, but I think it's not having a nice environment just makes your working day better and encourages them to come into the office.
Brilliant. Which neatly comes to workplace interiors, return on investment. What does that look like?
Yeah, it's an interesting one for this because we have, I guess, a double interest in it, whereby we do workspaces. And so it's incredibly important for us to get our own spaces, right? One, for our people, because that builds culture. And then where you have a strong, energetic culture, that is magnetic. People want to be a part of that. So when it comes to retention, you get people staying because they love being there and they're engaged in it. And also from a recruitment perspective, we use LinkedIn, for example, as a shop window. People see the site and where they could be, and they love that. The second part of it is we use them as showrooms. Okay, and I use the word showroom lightly because they're live workspaces. And so what we're able to do is we're able to bring potential clients into the spaces and say, look, you know, this is the level of detail that goes into the design, and this is how it manifests itself. This is what it looks like in that workspace. And you know, having spoken to Max and Jason in the Gravity area, they were talking about this year alone, feeling like there were probably 5 jobs that we had, which equated to roughly £1 million worth of work that were closed or converted because we took people and brought people into our workspaces.
Fantastic. And from a cyber perspective, return on investment, and what does that look like?
So we know that various studies have shown that diversity within your workforce sees more profitability through better quality decision making, innovative new products, new ways of working. So diversity doesn't happen by default. It's intrinsically linked to creating an inclusive culture, which we've talked about. And I think that also an inclusive culture within the business absolutely is underpinned by the office space that you work within. So there's the two parts to ensuring that you're being as inclusive as you can as an employer to your people, where they can work and how they can work. So the single mother or single father who's struggling to take their kids to school in the morning, if you're mandating they have to be there for the 9 o'clock stand up on a Monday morning, and that's a real struggle for them, and they're going to move on somewhere, that's not great. That's not inclusive. That's not helpful. If you are saying to the neurodiverse a person with autism or ADHD that they have to work in that very busy office environment that's hugely noisy and bright, but they just want to put headphones on and in a darkened space and go and write a 0 day for you, make loads of money, guess what? Again, it's finding that link between it's really good to be profitable, and if you want to be profitable, enable people to be their true authentic selves within a workspace. Yeah. And so I think inclusion, having that inclusive culture, which is led from the top. So I'm kind of trying to link a few things here. We've got leadership that leads to a culture of performance, but inclusion that brings diversity, that then means you get better outputs, better decision making, new products, more profit. So it all links together.
Yeah, well said, well said. Now, you might have noticed on the agenda that we were going to have Q&A from 10:30, but you'll also quite notice on the agenda that we should have started at 9. So, Max, if you sort of forgive me, I've got like an additional 10 minutes, I think, and I just want to come to our very last point. So I just beg everybody's indulgence really to come to the last P, which is place and workspace here. And how does each of your workspace reflect your values, and how does it support performance?
For us, it's about didn't sound like it. For us, it's about what's practicable. So you've exactly as we said, you've got to earn the money first. So we've just gone through a period of refurbing the canteen, the work toilets, etc. And it is important, but I think it's when you've done some of the basics, like you've got leadership in place, you've got a culture of togetherness, you've got the purpose. So I could put an uncultured business into an amazing workspace and it won't work. I can put a really great culture into an average workspace and get something special. Put the two together, a really good culture into a really good workspace, then you take the world on. So you've got to kind of like go up the ladder as you go. And at the moment, if I'm being honest, our office space is probably the bit that we're working on. But again, it's been designed by the guys in the office. What do you want? What do you need in your space? But it's a constant iteration. So it's important. The other bit is everybody talks about hybrid working. We've got lorry drivers, so we buy lorries with aircon. We buy and a bed if they want to get their head down. Cars, make sure they're good cars. We're hybrid and electric. But so I think that sometimes gets forgotten about. The people who are in, you've put some really cheap thing and they're doing 100,000 mile a year,
Well said, well said. Michelle?
I've already spoke quite a lot about our swanky new offices. So I don't know what else I could add, really.
Just really quickly, I guess, our 3 values are caring, curious and committed. And from a caring perspective, I've talked a bit about the level of detail that goes into designing the spaces, whether it's lighting kind of calculations to understand the kind of lighting that you need, or it's creating additional spaces that we have on site so people can go and have conversations that they need to, positive, challenging conversations. When it comes to curious, we have lots of breakout spaces that we've created, sort of stand-up desks, which are alongside your normal workspace, whereby you can flow from this focused work to, actually, we're going to collaborate. And we have boards that are next to that then, so you can build on ideas and grow ideas. And it's one thing that Ben, our MD, is militant about as well, right, is that it has to be efficient. Okay, because what we want is people to turn up and be able to start work straight away. And so the technology needs to be right. You need to be coming into clean desks whereby you can just set yourself up and go.
Well, hopefully we've nudged them from efficient into productive. Final words for you, Chris?
I couldn't agree with my fellow panelists more. I think, the best businesses that I've worked with, we try to do it at InfoSec people as well, the best businesses have great workspaces. They just do. You walk in there and you go, wow. Called Palantir. Palantir, slightly scary tech company, listed, and their offices in London were insane. They had sleeping quarters, they had dog looking after areas, they had a cafeteria, a theatre. I mean, it was insane, and they were vastly profitable, and it was all geared to providing an office environment you didn't want to leave, and you didn't have to. You could literally stay there, sleep, get up, they'd make you breakfast, you could go for a swim, push some weights, back in the office at 7:30. And guess what? They were hugely profitable because people loved it. It was like a cult, and it became, and the barrier to entry to joining Palantir was very high. So they only, I mean, check them out. They're very scary in what they actually do, but their office space was insane. So I think absolutely, your office space, the place where people want to come and work will reflect all of those points that we've just talked about. It's those 10% or 2% incremental gains that will make the difference.
Thank you. Everyone, that was 5 Ps that we've gone through. We got 4 panelists that were fantastic, and it's been my privilege, another P, I guess, to sit and listen to everyone and hear your thoughts on quite a difficult subject here, which is the big debate is all about. I'm going to pass it back to Max now. Hopefully, there's been lots of questions coming in, via your digital bits. We'll go to that first, I think. Then we can then open it up for anybody else who's got a burning question.
Absolutely. Well, round of applause to the panel. It's been absolutely unbelievable. Thanks again, Stuart. So, we've got about 15 minutes, I think. We'll open up with a few questions. You may still have time to put some of your questions down on the QR code that you've got there. So I'm just looking where I can get my questions loaded up, and we'll put it back to the panel. So I'll perhaps just say the question and let Stuart facilitate, if that's okay. So, do any of you offer a 4-day week or a reduced working week? If so, how have you found it? What challenges have you faced, and how did you address those?
Multiple questions. Who wants to take that one first then?
It's easy to answer because we don't offer a 4-day week, but SLG, the business that we share an office space with, does. However, we offer flexibility around the working week in terms of the hours that you do and whether you're in the office or out of the office. So Fridays are very, very quiet in the office. I think there's probably space for 150 people at SLG, and there's usually 3 or 4 people there. So didn't really answer it, but that's how we tackle it.
Just sort of echo that, I guess, in terms of workplace interiors. It's not something that we sort of formally offer, but there's always a conversation to be had in terms of flexibility and what an individual needs and what also suits us as a company as well.
We're a business that Bristol Council can order at 12 o'clock, and they have up to 20 kitchens the next day at 7 a.m. So not having a day's work won't work for us.
We have done that, and it worked really well. Again, it comes down to clarity around how that arrangement works. Is it? Are we talking? Well, the question was 4 days. Are we talking about compressed hours, doing 37.5 hours in 4 days? Or are we talking about doing 4 days as opposed to 5?
I took it about compression.
Compressed.
I'd say I took it. Yeah.
So obviously, if you're working 4 days rather than 5 days, then the baseline salary will reflect that. Targets will reflect that because you've got reduced time scales. So I think as long as you're not saying, sure, you can work 4 days, but your targets remain the same, or the output that I want to see is the same as somebody who's working 5 days. So for us, it worked very well. We had several people in both the recruitment business and the security consultancy that worked different hours. They worked 3 days or 4 days because the Fridays they needed to take their child or whatever. And again, just having clarity how you measure performance and how you ensure that it doesn't impact output or the client adversely, it's absolutely doable.
I'd say to everybody, look into the research. And when you look at the research, see who's sponsoring the research. So it's a bit like red wine's good for you. Says who? The Red Wine Society of England. So you can expect that. And there's quite a body out just now of research saying that 4-day week is good, but it's the people who are doing a 4-day week are part of the pilots. And you need to go a little bit further. And the evidence is not yet there to say productivity is achievable if what you do in 5 days is 4, let alone customer care.
I guess the other thing I would just add on that is where you have a company like ours where you have different brands that often do very different things. If you offer that to one because it works for those guys, it's not available to others, that creates an element of animosity and can negatively impact the culture. So I'm not sure what the answer is to that, but you have to tread carefully.
Thanks, guys. This is something Andy mentioned, so probably best for Andy to pass on more knowledge here. Was you mentioned your employees ask for something and then you act on it. How do you strike a balance between acting on these requests and being fair?
Fair? Okay, so if somebody asks for something and we act upon it, the act upon it might be we go away and look at it and it's not viable. But we get back to that individual and tell him it's not viable and explain why, or we park it on a shelf and say we'll look at that in 6 months. So I think acted upon it isn't everything you say we'll do. It's about you've said this, we've looked at it, and this is the explanation, and this is why. And I'll sit down and have that conversation with that individual, or the relevant manager will. In terms of fairness, I'm not quite sure what you mean by fair.
I guess what you're saying there, you've acted on it, but you're also trying to establish what that root cause was, and then being fair is delivering it, isn't it? And trying.
So if somebody says, "So we go to a 4-day week," we say, "Well, here's the incoming of our orders over a 20-day period, and it's exactly consistent." So if every Friday, what would we do on Monday? Should we shut the business and have 20% less salary because I can't dispatch anything on a Monday? So therefore, that doesn't work for us. So we've had the conversation. So act upon it isn't. We have to say yes to everything, otherwise we're going to be part of that, and everyone's going to talk about us. It's just being transparent with what we can and can't do. Yeah. And somewhere in the middle there might be some grey area where we can do a little bit of something.
Thanks, Andy. I guess this is to everyone. How does your workplace reflect your company culture? How did you achieve this? I guess we've touched upon a few things there. Has anyone got anything else to add on that? How does your workplace reflect your company culture? How did you achieve this?
I guess the bit that I would add is, describing the workplace culture. It's about relationships, and it's about depth of relationships and people coming together and enjoying spending time together. And in terms of the breakout spaces that we have, the kitchen area, we've designed them in such a way that it allows for that. So people can come together, and you see the benefits of that depth of relationship in the work that then happens when people work across departments. You're creating a space where people just sometimes accidentally come across each other.
Thanks, Alid. Anyone else to add to that? A lot of things have been covered there on culture.
Creating a space where, it's like, getting a new kitchen. You can have real fun with it, right? This is your opportunity to create the living embodiment of what you say you do. Whether that's crazy posters on the wall or amazing, plants everywhere or whatever that looks like. It's your opportunity to kind of take the idea that you've got in your brain for where this business is going to go and then create a space that kind of reflects that materially. So I've always loved mucking around with the office. My operations manager at InfoSec used to pull her hair out of me because I was buying a new coffee machine every other week. But I think the more you can take how you feel your culture of your business is and create the physical space. I'm sure Gravity Interiors would love to do that for you on a storyboard at the back.
Thanks, Chris. I guess this hasn't come up too much today. What's the panel's view on the role of organisation facilitating mental and physical health when both are on a decline in adults of a working age in the UK?
That is a huge question.
Yeah.
Let's let the HR expert answer.
I think there are many factors involved with this, and it's just my personal perspective. I think social media has a big part to play, and phones, and our addiction, and the fact that we're being pulled into technology so much means that over time we are losing that opportunity to connect. Remind me of the question, Max.
So it's really around how are you facilitating this mental and physical health when we're on the decline?
I think I think where I was getting to is there's a balance to be struck. The workplace does have a responsibility in my eyes for, as I mentioned, you have a sense of care for somebody, and it's not just about how they show up, but it's also their kind of wider persona in their life. But there is a point where you say people have to take responsibility for their own well-being as well. So I'm not quite sure where that line is, but I know a lot of workplaces at the moment are struggling to find it.
What we don't do is so when I'm probably looking at you and I'm afraid this age group, when we started work, it was, well, your problems are outside of work, you've got to keep them at work, don't bring them into work. And so allowing a connected conversation that work's impacted by your outside work and your outside work is impacted by work. So allowing that conversation to happen within work is something we really encourage. Past that, it's unique to each individual what that might be. And exactly right, you get to the conclusion of it's kind of your life, you know what it is. But if there's something we can do to help, then at least we have. And I think at the moment that's probably about as much as the ongoing conversation is, but it's, you don't have to solve everybody's problems.
Yeah, and I think we're trying to cater for 4 or 5 generations now, aren't we, in the workplace, and it's so different. I've forgotten what the 20-year-olds or the teens are now, Gen Z, or there's one before that, isn't there? And yeah, I guess what it comes down to is a breakout space people staring at phones, or is it trying to create an environment that takes you away from technology? And that's so apparent in younger age groups, probably more so, isn't it? And it's a big thing that's coming up in gravity for sure. Have we got a time for a few more questions? Should we go to the room? Yeah. Let's go for it, Nigel from Emerge Digital.
As a leader of a technology business, technology has been mentioned a lot on the stage today. What do the panel think about the AI and its role in the modern workplace and its impact on the workforce?
I think that's you.
I'm happy to step in there as well. That's fine.
You go for it, far enough.
And I guess speaking from a people perspective, and this is just from conversations that I've had, there is a fear of the unknown at the moment. And there's a concern about what the impact of this introduction of technology will be. I think you can probably take it back to moving from horse and cart to a motorized vehicle, right? The change really is that big. And so I think there's a big piece of work to be done around organizations just providing information, giving people access. I know you can do that in your own time, but what does it mean in a work capacity? That will then stem or kind of help to calm people around it in the first instance. And I think longer term, strategically, especially in my environment, I guess, when you're thinking about what used to be people planning and resource planning, all of a sudden that conversation is slightly different now, because we come back to output and outcomes, and what is the most efficient way to achieve that? Is that by a human or is that by a technology? So it's really interesting. I think the pace of change as well makes it difficult to get a clear answer.
I mean, I think it's an amazing thing, AI. There was a report yesterday, I think, that came out that said that hiring was changing at the entry level, was going down because companies were using AI tooling to do more of the, should we say, lower level, basic, heavy lifting in firms, and it's certainly happening in professional services firms. So nowadays, AI is here to stay. It's absolutely fundamental to business. Pretty much any business success, you can get so much out of AI, and having companies that are able to guide you through how to safely use those tools, and they are tools. I'm sure when the printing press came out, the Franciscan monks were all sitting around going, what are we going to do about this bloody printing press then? It's here. It's going to be amazing, and it's thinking a bit about it more as augmented intelligence rather than artificial intelligence. It makes you better and faster and quicker at what you already do, but you need to be able to check the results effectively. So you need to have the baseline knowledge to go, well, that's not right, and change it. And you need to ensure that you know where your data is going and all sorts of other things. But to your question, how do we feel it's impacting? I think it's a really great opportunities for businesses to go faster with the existing people they've got. One little question mark remains for those businesses. Law firms are starting to use AI to sift through big data and go through the legalese on, the legal framework for this case would be bang, and they'll get that rather than using interns or using lower level. They'll get it from AI now. So where do people start? And what's going to happen in 10, 15 years time, and all those experts who are able to go, well, that's not right, and change it, or to, same with software developers. Now you can use AI to write code for you, and you just go back and debug. What happens when those people leave the system and you can't sanity check what AI is writing because we haven't employed the people to come up through from the bottom? Do you know what I mean? You've got that journey at the moment. You can clearly see it's wrong. But my question mark is, what happens if we lose the people at the top? Which is it's a different topic for today, but super exciting, Nigel. I think
the analogy I use is that when calculators came into schools, I've now got people whose mental arithmetic is absolutely terrible, and they can't do anything without a calculator at the end of their arm. So it's going to be exactly the same to build on that point. The people, there'll be a first and second generation, then the third generation. I don't know what education is going to look like. Do you teach people how to use artificial intelligence, or do you teach them the knowledge to then be able to inquisitively and curiously use artificial intelligence to build upon that knowledge? So for me, in my business, and however long I've got left, it's a complement to what we do, but it's not a replacement.
That's right. And the basic thing about AI is, can you ask the right questions to elicit the right response? That's the real key with it. Are you asking the right question?
Isn't it? Prompt writers.
Oh man,
yeah.
But we're not doing it at school. It's crazy. Schools are not yet going. We're going to do a new session on how to use AI effectively. Why not? I want that graduate, please, who can come in and go, do you know what? You could do this with Copilot. Really? Brilliant.
I guess I'll just add one extra thing on that. I read something on LinkedIn the other day that was talking about the world of recruitment and where we are finding ourselves at the moment. And I guess the bigger picture of this is we will come to an equilibrium of where we want to apply this. Does it apply everywhere? Maybe not. But from a recruitment perspective, it was saying we're coming into a world whereby people are paying for AI software to sift CVs, all CVs that have now been created by AI. So you've got AI on either side of it. So actually, how are you finding?
Don't get me started on that one.
That's an interesting one, though, isn't it?
But how many people here think LinkedIn is now becoming really annoying with the content? Thank you. Great. Because all the content now, I don't read content on LinkedIn anymore because it's probably generated by AI half the time. Off. So now more than ever, human connectedness, actual physical relationships, where you can pick up the phone to somebody, actually means a lot more than getting that lovely curated email from someone on LinkedIn. You never know, but it's written by, so
Want to look for an opportunity. I think it allows that an authentic, humanised business. It's going to be far easier to stand out from the crowd.
Yes, agreed.
So therefore, if you ram that home, I think there's a competitive advantage to be had.
Agreed.
Thanks, guys. One question. We've got 2 minutes left. Nick there with his hand up patiently.
Thank you. Thanks for your time today. It's been really informative. I just wanted to understand, do you consider, with all your interiors and your businesses, do you consider new business when creating and deciding on your interiors? And the reason I say that is because I once spoke to a chap called John Hegarty, who's in advertising, and he said to me, Nick, don't ever think you're in the innovation space. You're in the entertainment space. Mm-hmm. So get an office slide, because people remember the office slide. And I just wanted to understand that difference between superficiality or whether you use it as a new business tool and whether that's even a consideration.
Shall I jump in here? Because just yesterday we created a Teams background showing our office so that when we're having remote Teams meetings with people, it's showing where we work, because a lot of our interactions are digital. So in a way, what's the point in having it if you're not showcasing it? So yeah, I think it's really important for that side of things. I'm really pleased we designed that slide now, just so I could use it here.
So we talked about authentic leadership, and I think, I mean, was it you, Nigel? Somebody said, "Oh, nice shirt." No, it's Todd. If I go to meet a client, this is what you get, because I believe that I'm there to meet you as a person. I'm not going to come as a suited and booted. I'm not going to come with what I think you want to see. I'm going to come as me, and I think I can help you as a client. I'd like to hear what your problems are, but if you're going to judge me on the flamingo shirt that I'm going to wear, and not by what I do, who I do it with, how I do it, and whether I can solve your problems, we're probably not going to get on all right anyway. Do you know what I mean? So I think if you are the type of
I think that's a bit different if it's your personal brand,
yes,
rather than an organizational brand.
But I was going to say, esto por es, be who you are in your office. If your office for you is, I want a slippy slide because that's rad, and you're going to create an environment where people come and do a slippy slide and they think that's cool as well, it will become self-fulfilling. Now, we could do the whole thing about cultural fit versus cultural ad, and you always want cultural ad. So you don't just want people who think like you and are like you and look like you. You want people that add to your business rather than fit. But if you as a leader, that's the kind of business you want to have, go for it. Do it. That will be a point of interest. It won't be for everybody, but neither will you. You won't be for everybody. You won't be for every client. So if your idea of an office interior is to do that, have at ya. If it's to be, white walls and it's, quiet, then it will be, do you know what I mean? So I think be authentic to who you are. This is where being a business leader is so exciting, because you can create an office environment that reflects who you are, what you want to build, what you want to be, what you want to be remembered for. None of our businesses are going to be around in 100 years. I put that down right now. Sorry, but it's going to be gone. So while we're here, why don't we create something that's really, truly memorable?
I think the consideration around the consideration around new business that you mentioned, we sell majority into a very, very competitive public money funded social sector. Me having £1 million office would not win me new business, because they would think I was charging too much. Therefore, it's like you don't turn up in a Bentley to a meeting. I used to work for Unite. Nick Porter, absolutely. He had 2 cars. He had the one he went to business meetings and the one he drove on the evenings and weekends, because he understood the appropriateness of what that is. So I think that's just another consideration, that it can become a disabler rather than an enabler if you're in a competitive space.
And that's the only thing I would add is I think there is value in the wow factor, and we find that when we bring people to our unique space on a farm, right? And where you go to park, there's a duck pond. So it's not a slide as such, but it's really unique, and there is a pull with that. But I think, like I talked about earlier, the space has to work. It's pointless putting money into things that don't add, as you were saying, to the culture or the outputs.
Thanks, Alid. Yeah, and just to finish there, I think even designing our own offices, it wasn't an intention to actually create a moving showroom. It was designed to suit the needs of the people. I think we're always doing that with our clients, but with our own office space, it was a natural byproduct to actually then bring clients there. It was like, we don't have to go to other, it's online, it's local, but actually when people come to our space, it's genuine, and hopefully that comes across that way as well. So thanks again, panel. Thanks for the questions. We're going to go back to the poll. So we're gonna have one more go at this, if you can. So phones out on the desk, the QR code, or on the screen. Have another go at this and see if your perspective perhaps has shifted. It was a 70% landslide to hybrid work last time, and perhaps some of these conversations today has changed your view. Some of that productivity we're talking about, bringing people back to the office. Hybrid's always going to exist. I think it looks very different now. But is that in-person, in the office collaboration, team time more important to you now? Is your perspective changed? Or do you sack the office off altogether and go remote entirely? While we're waiting for the results, just a final one from me. Gravity Office Interiors, we've seen a huge shift in what clients are asking. We've talked about this. What do teams actually need from the workplace? And that's why we wanted to open up this conversation today, get people here, get people really engaged. And hopefully you've had that from the panel today. Gravity, we specialize in blending great design, but bringing data to everything as well that we're talking about. I feel like we have a USP there. We bring data by way of space utilization tools that actually get clients thinking about what they're going to use their space for. They may be upscaling and there may be more people, but it actually may be a downsized office in terms of square meterage. And, we're talking about a time where cost per square foot of offices is absolutely through the roof. So why have a massive office if no one's going to be there? That's something we're trying to promote so much. And the data allows us to show that. So let's see what the polls are saying. I'm looking at the screen. It's not going to come up there, so I'll read it off my my iPad. We're still a landslide to hybrid work, 77%. So it's actually increased a little bit, and that goes to show it's such a massive thing. And hopefully, a lot of you in your businesses have adopted that now, and that could be the future for the short foreseeable. That could be the long-term future. Let's see how that one pans out. So, final one from me. Thanks again to the panel and our host, Stuart. Round of applause to these guys. And a few thank yous. This day wouldn't have come together without our fantastic marketing team and Koba for doing all the photography and videography. Thank you very much, guys. Another round of applause, please. And that's where we wrap up. So don't feel like you've got to rush off. Appreciate your patience for being here for a couple of hours in a busy working day. Love to have a chat to you after if you're around, and make sure you mingle with the room and get to know each other as well. There's so many great businesses inside Gloucestershire and further afield. So thanks again for coming, and hopefully we'll have another debate like this in the near future. Thanks, guys.